Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of r/slash regular revenge. In today's episode, Supervisor dug his own grave. 97.5% turnover rate? I'll take your job from the grave. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. Supervisor dug his own grave. This happened about 10 years ago. It's very long, so I apologize for that. The supervisor position for my department was known to have a lot of turnover, so I had a lot of bosses. But the one I'm going to tell you about takes the prize as the biggest ass hat, and I'll tell you how I got revenge. So, new boss starts working at my agency. We're created by the state legislature, but funded by the users we regulate. As a governmental agency, it's extremely difficult to fire someone. It has to be a blatant act, easily verifiable, and in violation of published policies. You get the idea. Here's my story. I'd been employed with the agency for 13 years, had a solid work ethic and provable productivity. My position is a professional one, and I have 2 degrees in the field. I loved my job. About 8 months before bad boss, Terry, his real name and IDGAF, was hired, a tech worker, Emily, also real name and again IDGAF, had been promoted. Emily was known to spend her workday texting her SO or BFF, or on the phone making appointments or scheduling vacations, and brown-nosing whomever was her direct report, speaks to how she got the promotion. I tried to train her up, but she was always too busy or out sick. Enter newly hired Terry. He was cognizant of my skills and work, and was generally genial for the first couple of months. Suddenly, Emily was getting the choice assignments. When I asked Terry about it, he responded that she had experience. I countered that no, she didn't, because she didn't have time to be trained in that area. I warned him that her lack of experience was going to cause him heartburn. Within a month it did. He had to fix her work, and would spend hours in his office trying to train her up in the area. Now let me say that Emily was attractive. Tall, blonde, curves in the right proportions and in the right places. I'm short, redhead, tomboy with the curves corresponding with that description. But I'd been the sole employee in the department for 11 years and had built a solid reputation in the field. Terry begins to walk into my shared office when Emily was out to tell me the agency no longer needs my expertise and I should go find another job. He tells me this daily for weeks. I finally go to his boss, who had been my boss prior to Terry, and ask if the agency would like me to leave. He vehemently tells me the agency needs my expertise and asks why I've asked that. I tell him what Terry has been telling me. A discussion happens between the two and I'm told that Terry denies telling me that. Now I see how it is. Terry nearly gets me written up twice, both times lying to HR. Emily gets a promotion to supervisor, for which she was wildly unqualified, and she crashed and burned within 9 months, another story, and I get the crappiest review I'd ever had. I knew I had to bide my time, keep the cleanest nose ever, but I knew how to take him down. March comes around and I'd put in for vacation for a week that month. I'd put in for the time off 2 months earlier. The Friday before my vacation begins, I'm called into Terry's office. You need to reachable on your cell phone the entire week, he says. Well, that's going to be difficult. My parents live in another state in a rural area and the cell service tower is for another provider. I only get service when I go into town, I informed him. I want the phone number to your parents' house. Give it to me. No. That's an intrusion to their privacy. There's nothing I'm responsible for that can't wait a week, I told him. Give it to me, or I'll have you written up. Okay, I'll give you the number. In the back of my mind, I'm thinking he's written his own death warrant. You see, at our agency, whenever you make a long-distance call, you have to enter a code that is unique to you for the call to go through. On Wednesday of my vacation, my mom answers the phone and tells me it's for me. Terry's on the phone demanding the password for my computer. I decline to give it to him. He insists I give it to him. While he's in the line yelling at me, I log into my personal email, and start composing an email to the head of admin and HR director detailing this phone call. I eventually hang up on Terry and send my email. Monday morning at 9 a.m., I'm called into the HR office. "What is this email you sent? What happened?" I detailed the call and what Terry wanted, which is against agency policy, and how I handled it. "Can you prove it?" Well, he had the call on speaker and Emily was in his office to witness it. "Oh, by the way, here's my mom's phone number. I'm sure you can figure out if it's been called, when and by whom." Terry is an absolute sh*t to me all day. Whenever Emily left the office, so did I. I was done with the asshat. Done. The next day Emily is called into HR. An hour later, Terry is called, Emily hadn't returned. 2 hours later, they both return. Emily begins to ask me about certain areas she hasn't gotten into yet, and I kind of blow her off. She's an accessory in my mind. Terry refuses to speak to me at all. I found out later that he was told to stop harassing me, and the next time I complained, he'd be fired. 6 months later, Terry quits. 6 months after that, they demote Emily back to a position equal to mine but out of my department. I retire in 8 months with a sweet pension and retirement benefits. F***CKU both Terry and Emily. No one screws with me and gets away with it. 97.5% turnover rate? I'll take your job from the grave. TA for reasons soon to be obvious. I had just graduated from college, did not do an internship, shame on me, and had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. I was on Indeed.com, job posting site, just throwing up my resume to see what stuck. I was not having much luck finding anything. That was until I received a call from a security company. You know, the company that advertises itself as the largest security company in the world? Anyways, they brought me in for an interview, which was actually disguised as a job offer. Experience now would have seen that as a red flag, but I was green and didn't know any better. For those that don't know, security works like this. Client, I need security. Security company, we can provide guards to you at X plus $25 and pay our guards X. Client, great. It's a horrible business model, but again, I was young and ignorant. In order to protect my anonymity, the client will hereafter be referred to as Center. Who Center was is irrelevant to this story. After several HR hiccups, more red flags, I finally made it to Center to start guarding their facility. I cannot emphasize how good of a job this could have been. I was paid well for the work I was providing, not like the security company, but still well. The job itself was cake, my coworkers were awesome, more on that in a bit, and there was such a camaraderie among the other guards. Well, all except one person. The site supervisor. We'll call her Ursula, because that's what that witch looked like. Unfortunately, because this happened so many years ago, I can't provide as many juicy details for a good suspenseful build-up, but I'll try my best to fill in as many things as I can. If you have any questions, comment below. I worked with the greatest group of men and women I will probably ever work with. I worked with former Marines, law enforcement, naval ship captains, high-ranking military, pretty much an elite group of boys and girls. I was clearly a boy in their world, but for some reason, they really liked me, motivated me to reach for more. The reality was, they had their careers in service, and just wanted something to get them out of the house. Don't get me wrong, they weren't old and decrepit. Most of them were from the north, and had already retired out, and were receiving a good pension. They kept reiterating it to anyone who would talk to them. The thing was, Ursula was just like me in that she had a sh*t resume, had no experience, much less be qualified to supervise this elite group. Once she realized that, that's when the paranoia began to set in. She had a list. Everyone that was on it, their workplace became a living hell. Not only this Franken *tch chase you off, but if she caught wind of where you were going, she'd actively call your next employer to drag your name through the mud. It was sick. Not only was she toxic as a boss, but she was woefully incompetent. Let me give you a summary of some of the things Ursula did. Ursula constantly threatened termination, openly admitting to targeting employees and minority employees especially, continuously revised the schedule throughout the week, causing multiple guards to arrive, or sometimes posts uncovered, wielded the schedule as a weapon to punish guards she didn't like, degraded our staff as well as center staff on a routine basis, intimidated guards requesting leave, falsified timesheets, illegally initiated traffic stops on center's employees illegally. Detaining center's employees, illegally searched center's employees' possessions, disgusting amount of sexual harassment, warned us guards not to speak with center's employees, was lying more than Congress, and went through several mood swings a shift. Yeah, she was a real piece of work. Being located in a southern state, there was no union for us. The best we could do was keep firing emails up the chain of command. When I say we, I meant them. At the time, I didn't have the confidence I do now, and I lurked in the shadows. My thought process was if these people, who are way smarter than me, aren't able to affect change, what chance did I have? Ursula's actions I listed above were quite routine, and were displayed on a daily basis. Slowly but surely, the great men and women I came to know and love would come to my shack and say, "OP, I just can't do it anymore." It was so sad. I respected these people so much, but they were just cannon fodder in Ursula's insane war. When the new employees showed up to replace the ones that left, they would all say deuces as soon as they arrived. One night, I was talking with one of Center's employees, because *CK anything Ursula had to say, and they were laughing, because a report had just came out about how my company had a turnover rate of 97.5%. Even though it could have been easy to figure out, I had never thought about it, and that left me shaken. By that point, all the original staff was gone, and I was now a supervisor, not dissimilar to the Hitler Youth situation. That's honestly how it felt like. I knew I was a passenger on the Titanic. How we didn't lose that contract just blows my mind. Not only did my company hate her, but everyone at Center did as well, because she made their lives a living hell by being Karen Blart wannabe cop. I figured if we didn't lose the contract, I would end up on the *T list eventually, and get chased out. However, for all the misery she caused people I respected and Center, I wasn't about to go into the night quietly. And that's where the revenge begins. Remember that college degree I mentioned earlier? Yeah, it's in communications. It's a stupid degree that I don't recommend anyone getting, unless you like barely above minimum wage. But what that degree entailed was lots of research, papers, interviewing, etc. I really didn't know how good I was at it, until after this plan concluded and used it several times later, different stories for a different day. Now, I understand a lot of people might be judging the way I write this post. There's a huge difference though. Right now, I'm chilling while I casually type this. The difference is I wrote a formal piece for a professional setting, not dissimilar to lawyer jargon. I knew what would happen if I went up the chain of command. There's no amount of technical allegations I could throw at the security company, because they are siding with the very likely option, I'm a P*SS on, that won't go beyond HR. I had already secured a new job in a different field, notice already in, so I had nothing to lose at this point. I interviewed all current staff, former staff I trusted, and gathered every single grievance they had against Ursula. I still have that list on my desktop, and you read some of the highlights above. They had no idea what I was doing, except OP has an idea. I don't recommend anyone doing what I did, but like I said, I was out the door, and moving on to a different field, so I didn't give a D*MN anymore. I'm honestly not entirely sure of the ranking structure that Center had. There were so many chiefs in different departments within. I had to trust somebody though. One boss, who I'll refer to as Bossman from now on, hated Ursula with a passion, because her BS made his life hell. I had to test his loyalty though. One morning, while Bossman and I were alone, I began a little light interrogation, while feeding him intel about the guard situation being under Ursula's thumb. He agreed that the turnover was unacceptable, but he wasn't high enough up the chain to affect any change, unless he had some sort of proof. I didn't go into details, but I informed him I had a list, and I'd be happy to give it to him. He said absolutely. The problem was that Ursula was hella paranoid, would know if I showed up when I wasn't scheduled, and rightfully suspect mutiny was afoot. I told him I'd meet him at 6 a.m. the next day. I went home that night and put the finishing touches on the list. There was one final thing I had to do. This was a guarded facility, and I'd have to get past the guard without raising suspicion, or alert Ursula I was there. When I got to the gate, I don't know what came over me. I lifted up the envelope my letter was in and said, "Mark, obvious fake name, I was never here." He just looked at me, nodded, and let me through. Why, I'll never know. Didn't ask. He had no idea about the list. He hated Ursula too, but he did a lot of talking, so I never shared it with him. I met Bossman, handed him the envelope, we shook hands, and that was that. I was already on the schedule to start my next job that overnight, so I went home to sleep. I never expected anything to come of this, because nothing had happened after so many good faith attempts with proof. I just did it, so I could walk away with a clean conscience. I went to work that night, turned off my phone, and when I came back to the car to have a smoke, I turned on my phone. My phone began flooding with text messages. I really don't have the full story of what happened. This is what I collected from my ex-coworkers. Apparently, Bossman with several of the other chiefs had forced my security company to have an on-site meeting, told them what a piece of sh*t Ursula was, how much of a liability she was, and to remove her from the site permanently. I also heard she was wailing while she was being escorted to her car. Ah, yes, salty tears. From what I heard, she wasn't fired, but just rehomed in a site by herself, stripped of all of her power.